Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mias, and today I'm actually going to be talking about the card Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, and we'll try to figure out if this card is good in this format or in future format, what are the pros, what are the cons, and over 40 targets that you can actually use with this card in order to completely cripple your opponent's strategy. So, of course, before you start, friendly reminder to like and subscribe, because it motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these, and yet, let's jump right into it. Alright, so for the pros, this card actually has the ability to outright win you the game against certain decks that actually just have a specific extra deck card as a choke point. So, for example, ABC, if they lose ABC Dragon Buster, their A, B, and C letters, all they really do now is Link and Xyz summon, but they can't really summon a really powerful monster that tags out, special summon all of them back from the banish a card during either player's turn, and become unaffected by card effects when you equip letters to it. It becomes significantly less overwhelming, so because of that, a deck like ABC, and of course there are multiple more examples, would actually suffer heavily from getting hit by a Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. And also, this card gains even more value in already established formats in which you can already kind of predict what kind of decks people are going to play. So you can actually just already splash 3-4 extra deck cards in your deck. Well, in your extra deck, of course, not in your main deck. We're not trying to cheat today. Maybe tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, it has flaws, of course. It's a hand shop. Hand shop usually have a lot of flaws in common. For example, the fact that it's once per turn, it's pretty much a dead draw because it's more of like a prevention kind of card rather than a board breaking card. So if your opponent already summons like the problematic monster and you draw this later on, it's going to hit not only less copies, but maybe your opponent is no longer really affected by that. And also on top of that, your opponent has to control more monsters than you do. So if you go first, this card is just inherently worse, unfortunately. Also, you might have to pass or just summon a single monster. However, if you summon a single monster and your opponent is playing something like Sky Striker, they only need one monster to summon from their extra deck. So you can kind of see where this is going. Or even worse, if you side deck a card like Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries against a deck that plays Dragoon of Red Eyes and you are trying to hit their Dragoon, well, the thing that can happen is them having no monsters on their field, you also having no monsters on your field, sorry, and them just activating Red Eyes Fusion, and of course, they don't control more monsters than you. It's 0-0, so you can't prevent them from summoning Dragoon, and now you have a useless hand trap in your hand. Instead of fighting your opponent with like 5 cards, you're fighting them with 4 cards, so you're pretty much always from behind, and just tell yourself that this could have been a Forbidden Drop, a Dark Ruler, a Kaiju, etc. Now, there are 2 other things that I want to say about Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries before we, continue over to the targets. Well, first of all, this card can actually kind of get a hard countered. Of course, you already know Call by the Grave, etc. Not really 3 tactical talents because the impact might be so huge that it might just not be enough, drawing just 2 cards, but still not being able to do too much from your extra deck. But a lot of people said that this card was really good against Virtual World since you could actually hit their VFD. But the issue with that is, first of all, I disagree on so many levels. Your opponent can actually go Bamboozling first and then negate the Ghost Reaper if you try to hold it for later. But if you use it too early, your opponent can actually banish the Nyan Nyan when it leaves the field, as a synchro material or something, and then it recycles back the VFD that they got Ghost Reaper, since Ghost Reaper actually banishes face up, or even if it banished face down, it wouldn't have mattered because Nyan Nyan, just like Omega, allows you to return back face down cards in your extra deck or in your graveyard. That's actually kind of a bummer if you're trying to make them lose VFD, but to be fair, it's definitely going to lose a lot of traction. I'm pretty sure VFD is gonna get banned. Maybe the moment I'm making this video, it is actually already banned. So yeah. And also, not that this is really relevant anymore, but back in the days when people were using Ghost Reaper, people were actually playing 3 of the card that you really needed. For example, Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. So if they actually got Ghost Reaper for 3 Dante, they could actually use Pot of Acquisitiveness to not only put back all the Dantes back in the extra deck, but actually draw a card. So it is actually a clean -1 for your opponent, since they had to commit a full card just for you to not only counter it, but also refund the card that you used to beat them. Kind of already do the maths in your head. You can actually get punished if Ghost Reaper really becomes mainstream and everybody starts playing 3 of the card. Pot of Acquisitiveness might be good one day. And the final weird thing is that you might have Ghost Reaper drawn in game 1 against a deck that you just didn't really expect. For example, like a random Crusadia deck OTKing you with like Equimax. And again, in this kind of situation, you kind of just could have told yourself, well, I mean, this could have just been another hand shop and I wouldn't be dead right now. But just because I didn't predict that I was gonna play against Crusadia, I didn't have a good extra deck target in my deck because they don't really play a lot of cards that people just use, Magius Regulus and then Equimax. That's kind of all they really need to OTK. If you have something that is way too niche like Ghost Reaper, well, it's just not good. That's just one of so many examples. There's also Fluffles, where you might be like, oh, I should have had like the Sabertooth or the Tiger or Kraken or yeah, you name it. The list goes on. There's just so many cards that you have to cover with something like Ghost Reaper that you are bound to eventually be unlucky and play against a deck that just should actually lose to it technically, but you don't really have the extra deck space or you just couldn't predict it. So my goal today is going to be to give you over 40 examples of targets that actually are going to help you deck build in order to avoid kind of just being like, oh, what should I actually put in my deck for Ghost Reaper targets? So I will be doing the job for you. Alright, so first few obvious monsters are the fusions. So ABC Dragon Buster, Shuttle Construct, Shuttle Winda. I mean, all of that is really obvious. You know, they completely destroys ABC. It's pretty good against Shuttle, especially the Winda if you're really scared of, I mean, that just completely shutting down your strategy. Of course, if they have Schism access and you hit something like a Winda, they can still make a construct and then send like an Ariel, banish 3 cards from your graveyard, send like a dragon or whatever, and then destroy a card, a spell or trap on your field. So it's obviously not ideal, but against a pure Shuttle deck, maybe it's just gonna be a bit better. There's also Invoked Merkaba against Invoked, but again, they can also go for Invoked Ogoides. You could almost argue to use it on El Mirage or Secure Gardna, but then if they have a light attribute in their hand, well, it's not that bad. Or they can straight up just use a light attribute from your graveyard, or actually just go for Magistus Artemis. So that's actually just not a good idea whatsoever. They might actually play one Magistus Artemis and then one El Mirage and one Secure Gardna just to have perfect cover. There's also Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, but preferably just against the deck that actually make Anaconda, not really against the deck that play Insight, that just don't really need to summon a monster, just use Red Eyes Fusion and that's it. Because of course Ghost Reaper wouldn't work, as I explained at the very beginning of the video. And of course for the remainder of fusion monsters, there's Buster Blader Fusion, but also Buster Dragon, the Synchro monster. And the reason why I'm actually putting them out there is because people actually have been messing around with the Buster Blader engine quite a lot. Kind of as of lately, I guess I want to say, it's gaining more popularity. It might be the next replacement for VFD for combo decks, honestly, or I guess for trap decks, sorry, because it's just kind of 2 trap cards, a brick, and then a good search card. Of course, if you can actually get a dragon in your graveyard, then even the trap card becomes a starter, so that's actually pretty neat. And finally, I have Dragon Maid Shiyu against Dragon Maids because that is their 1 negate, so if you can actually cut them off from that, well, you won't actually have to worry about that, so you can actually maybe play safer. Dragon Maid is getting better and better, so you maybe have to watch out for that. For the synchros, I want to reiterate the fact that I don't recommend siding any Ghost Reaper, and yeah, especially siding Ghost Reaper against Virtual World wouldn't make sense. But yeah, targets for that deck just aren't really good because of Nyan Nyan, and also they can kind of still play the game, honestly. They just have so many options to their disposal, so it's just not ideal. There are a couple of options for synchro monsters. There's of course Infernoble Knight Charlemagne against Infernobles, obviously. There's technically Borload Savage, but I'm not really going to talk about him too much. And then there are some kind of more obscure cards. So in case Naturia Beast becomes good one day, could actually be a really good Ghost Reaper target. I mean, not really that if it becomes good one day, because the card is already really good, but it's hard to make, or decks that can make it are unfortunately not that great, like Melfi. They can't really compete with the meta, but obviously the deck, it doesn't suck, I want to say. It has decent options. It's just not really a top tier deck. And of course, we have Junk Speeder and TG Hyper Librarian for Synchrons if they ever become a problem. Again, they actually received really good support with the level 4 tuner, the Stardust Synchron. Yeah, actually, that's a card. Of course, the other Majestic card, so that's actually definitely something that you have to keep in mind, alongside maybe the level 12 Synchros, but I don't think that makes too much sense, except if people are really turboing out triple Quasar turn 1. Alright, moving on to the Xyz, I actually have Zeus. This is especially good against Zodiac, even though they still have access to Drancia, but it's also really good against just generic Xyz decks. So if you actually have Reaper in your main deck on a game 1, and you know that your opponent's only win condition is actually going for Zeus, well, if you actually cut them off from that, well, maybe they won't be able to go for that board wipe, and you can actually secure a win after that. There's also VFD for decks that actually might be able to turbo it out, but again, the card is just so likely to get the hit on the deck's ban list that I don't really want to talk about it too much. Then we got Gallon Granite for Adamancipator, Dante Traveler of the Burning Abyss for Burning Abyss, Toad for Paleozoic, Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir for Drytron, although even if you hit that card, they still have Union Carrier to be able to play really well. That would only be a really good option if Union Carrier kind of completely dies off, either gets banned or cut off from the main deck, but honestly, I doubt people are ever gonna do that, since the extra deck space for Drytron really isn't that tight anyways. And there's also Lyrilusk Recite Starling. That's the card that searches the level 1 winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. hand, and that is the Xyz for Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade, which is a really good card. Of course, I mean, if you can actually go into Zeus after that, it might actually start being a bit overwhelming. Last but not least is Zexal for Numeron deck. So that covers up the Xyz monsters. So now let's jump into everyone's favorite part, the Link monsters. Alright, so some of them are extremely simple and easy because you probably already have them in your extra deck. They're generic staples like Boral Sword, Access Code, Appaloosa, Unicorn, Phoenix. A lot of people actually play those cards, so it's not like you have to commit extra cards to your deck just to hit other people. There are some situations where reprinting some of the cards, like even Phoenix and Unicorn, can actually make a lot of sense. For example, if you have like Ghost and Match or Rivalry against Burning Abyss, and they're locked under either Fiend or Dark, you know that if you can Reaper whichever card they would use to out you, you can actually win the game. So that's really interesting actually, and it does come up sometimes, so definitely don't sleep on that. Then two decks for the Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade deck, especially Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade, would be the Tri-Brigade Link 4. I don't really know his name too much. Ominous Omen or something like that. It has a lot of really good effects, like it searches and it sends from the field to the graveyard, like without targeting, I think. And there's also Simorgh, Bird of Sovereignty, which either summons the Wind Barrier statue or Mist Valley Apex Avian, so definitely have to watch out for that. Galdit, the Chained Draco Serpent. The name in the TCG is Saryuja Skull Dread, but I still call it with the old name, yes. As long as people don't really play Danger Dark World FTK, which got banned anyways, you should be gooch. Now there's also Mega Clops for the Numeron decks, just in case your deck cannot really inherently out a Mega Clops and you're really scared of that on a game 1, and then on game 2 and 3, whatever, it's easy to adapt. But on a game 1, just being able to prevent your opponent from Mega Clopsing you in case it actually becomes like meta one day could actually make a lot of sense. Now we're actually going to move on into the combo-oriented cards that a lot of decks have actually played, especially at Emancipator format that was really annoying, and these cards are Mecha Phantom Beast Aurora Dawn, Crystron Needle Fiber, and Isolde Two Tails of the Noble Knights. I obviously hate those cards because they're ridiculously powerful, so if you can actually stop maybe Infernobles, which actually plays all these three cards from either having their full combo or just using it at the perfect choke point, well, you might actually just make them pass turn because it's kind of a linear combo deck. Sometimes it plays with two cards, meaning that if you kind of don't really have access to the full route, well, you really just have to pass turn there. So maybe if they have like two warriors with no tuner, then you can actually hit the Isolde and they can't really do anything after that. So that's actually definitely really nice. There's also cards for very specific decks like Phantom Knight of Rusty Bardiche for Phantom Knights, obviously. Spiral Double Helix for Spirals in case it becomes good again. Spirals has been that deck that was good so many times. I mean, I guess two times in 2017 and in 2020, which is kind of scary. We rarely see decks that are tier 1 twice in their lifespan with like a 3-year difference. Zodiac was kind of like an exception to the rule. It was really good in 2017 and now in 2020, 2021. So I guess there's that. Also, other cards that would be really good would be the Raid Raptor Wystrix, that is insane against the Raid Raptors. So I guess speaking of Phantom Knights, Heavy Metal Foes Electrum in case Pendulums actually get a little treat from Konami. Again, the ban list is not really out there, so I'm just making predictions, but I don't think it's gonna get unbanned. If it does, it'll be a huge boost for Pendulums though, so if you can actually hurt their Electrum, it's just going to revert them back to what they were before the ban list, essentially. Then there's Salamandrate Sunlight Wolf for Salamandrate, Altergeist Hextia for Altergeist. There is also Union Carrier for pretty much a lot of decks. Drytron has been using this card quite a lot. However, I want to say if you hit their Union Carrier and they still have a pretty decent hand, it's just not going to hurt them that much. They might still have some good options, so that's kind of a bummer. Then we have Cherubini Black Angel of the Burning Abyss for Phantom Knight oriented strategies, Anaconda for fusion based strategies and decks that actually play Dragoons, so especially those combo decks. Control decks don't really play Anaconda too much, or I guess they kind of do, but they don't really rely on it to get to Dragoon since they can actually use Red Eye's Fusion with Red Eye's Insight to actually get there and then even revive back the Dragoon, so that's actually kind of good for them. And then there is Sky Striker Kagari in case you actually really want to hurt Brandish, or I guess Sky Striker, woo. And the Dark Infant at Ignister is actually a really interesting one in case Ignister ever becomes good one day, and also Dark Templar, the Link 3. But apart from that, the only really other Link one that I have, I guess there are two. There's the Magical Musketeer Max, and there's also Trap Trick Sarah. Both of them kind of just got their support in the same set, but people saw more potential in Trap Tricks than in Magical Musketeer, even though I want to say even Magical Musketeer is a pretty decent deck. Yes, that's all I had to show you guys for my beautiful Ghost Reaper review video. If you guys have any comments or feedback, let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.